Dr. Thomas Whitmore had interred his faith alongside his wife and son 3 years prior, submerging his sorrow in whiskey and solitude at the harsh boundary of the relentless Arizona desert. As a dying mother and her young son fell at his doorstep, he confronted a pivotal choice, one that could shatter the fragile. Remnants of a solar revelation, revealing that the miracle he had long ceased to believe in had been patiently awaiting his response all along. The bottle shattered against the adobe wall, whiskey spilling like sorrow over the sun-drenched clay. Dr. Thomas Whitmore gazed at the shards of glass strewn across his floor, pondering the moment when his mornings had devolved into this chaotic ritual of throwing things. Beyond the confines of his cabin, the Arizona desert unfurled in an unbroken expanse beneath the relentless August sun of 1876, a barren landscape that mirrored the void within his heart. 3 years prior, Thomas stood as the most esteemed physician in Copper Creek. For countless miles, weary travelers journeyed to seek his aid for their ailing children. His wife, Sarah, welcomed them with refreshing water and gentle words, while young Timothy sat quietly in the corner, constructing wooden block towers that stretched toward the ceiling like small offerings. At that moment, the cabin resembled a tomb. Thomas struck out at the glass shards, only to be met with immediate regret as a sharp pain pierced through his bare foot. Crimson liquid oozed between his toes, a vivid contrast to the weathered floorboards beneath him. He let out a bitter laugh at the Aronia doctor, a man so inept he couldn't even manage his own well-being. The medical bag lingered in the corner, a remnant of the past month when it had been carelessly discarded. The leather lay cracked and dusty. Within lay instruments that had once been the harbingers of salvation, medications that had instilled a sense of hope in families facing despair. Now they appeared as remnants of a life once lived by another, as futile as prayers murmured to avoided heavens. With a pained gait, he made his way to the window, peering out at the distant town that lay 3 miles beyond. Smoke curled from chimneys and forges, a testament to life persisting in his absence. A fragment of his mind pondered whether Dr. Whitmore still lingered in anyone's memory. Perhaps they recounted tales of the man who once possessed the gift of healing, only to be consumed by the shadows of his own sorrow. In the spring of 1873, cholera descended upon Copper Creek, racing through the town with the ferocity of wildfire. Thomas toiled tirelessly, sacrificing sleep, driven by an unwavering determination to rescue as many as he could. Yet illness remains indifferent to the expertise of physicians or the affection of loved ones. It claims what it desires. It was Sarah who succumbed to illness first. Thomas employed every remedy at his disposal, every trick acquired during his medical training back east. He grasped her hand tightly, the heat of her fever radiating between them, murmuring vows that danced just beyond his reach. 3 days later, Timothy fell ill. The boy, once fearless and bold, now quivered in his father's embrace, his voice a fragile whisper, as he questioned why the medicine failed to bring relief. Thomas interred them on the rise behind the cabin, beneath the solitary oak where Sarah once immersed herself in the pages of her Bible. With his own hands, he etched their names into wooden crosses, the very hands that had ushered new life into the world, mended fractured bones, and wrestled with death countless times before. That marked the final occasion he had laid his hands upon his medical instruments. The arid breeze shook the panes, wafting the fragrance of sagebrush and earth. Thomas leaned his forehead against the warm glass, sensing the sun's heat penetrate to his skin. Initially, the townspeople had made earnest attempts to lend their assistance. Neighbors arrived with dishes in hand, extending their warmth and solace. The preacher arrived, offering hollow phrases about divine intentions and celestial gatherings. Yet sorrow is a toxin that seeps into the lives of all it encounters. Thomas seethed with anger at their pity, felt a bitter sting at their health, and harbored resentment towards their intact families. He began with a drink to dull the ache, then turned to it as a means of escape, and eventually relied on it merely to survive another day. One by one, the visitors faded away. His only visitors now consisted of wandering salesmen and wayward travelers who rapped on his door in search of guidance. He would gesture toward the town and shut the door with a force that concealed the wreckage he had turned into. The crimson from his foot had congealed into a deep, dark mark upon the floor. Thomas gazed at it, recalling the way Sarah would reprimand him for bringing mud into the house. She insisted he sit on the porch as she meticulously cleaned his boots, her laughter ringing out in response to his playful protests that a bit of dirt was harmless. "A tidy home is a joyful home," she would often declare, vigorously scrubbing away at persistent stains with the resolve of someone who held a deep faith in structure and intention. Chaos reigned in this place, devoid of any semblance of purpose. Dirty dishes amassed in the sink, unwashed clothes strewn across the furniture, and empty bottles stood lined on the shelves, resembling soldiers keeping vigil over his chaos. Thomas made his way to the kitchen, his fingers trembling ever so slightly as he unscrewed the cap of the last bottle of whiskey. The liquid seared his throat, yet it was a purifying fire, less complex than the anguish that resided within his heart. He savored another sip, then another, allowing the comforting haze to envelop his mind. Amidst the fog, echoes of their voices occasionally reached him, Sarah's laughter, a melody of joy, and Timothy's animated tales of the lizards he had captured. Yet those sounds were merely echoes from a life that seemed to belong to someone else entirely. The sun ascended, transforming the cabin into a sweltering furnace. Thomas had long since abandoned the practice of opening windows. The heat served as yet another form of torment, a means to experience something other than the void that had consumed his heart. He sank into his chair, the very one Sarah had insisted he purchase, claiming that a respectable doctor ought to possess suitable furnishings. The cushions, once vibrant, now lay faded and torn, their stuffing spilling forth like the remnants of hope that had once infused this space. Above, a hawk glided in wide arcs, harnessing the warm air with a fluid elegance. Thomas observed its ascent, spiraling upwards with grace, until it vanished into the radiant expanse of the sky. He gazed at the bird with a longing heart, yearning for its freedom, its capacity to soar above the desert and glimpse the vast expanse beyond the infinite horizon. Yet, there are certain prisons from which one cannot merely take flight to escape. The cry that pierced the arid expanse was not of human origin, it was the harsh clamor of metal scraping against stone, succeeded by a resounding crash that reverberated across the barren landscape like a clap of thunder. Thomas jolted awake in his chair, the vacant whiskey bottle tumbling from his lap and shattering on the floor. A plume of dust billowed through the window, originating from the old mining road, 2 miles south of his cabin. A figure found themselves ensnared in a web of trouble. Thomas rubbed his eyes, attempting to dispel the haze clouding his thoughts. The sun had traversed the expanse of the sky, while he lay in slumber for countless hours. In the distance, a dark silhouette emerged, an overturned wagon, its wheels languidly rotating in the relentless desert heat. His initial impulse was to avert his gaze, to feign ignorance of what he had just witnessed. For 3 years he had been sidestepping the troubles of others, turning a blind eye to their suffering. Yet, the stillness that enveloped the aftermath of the crash tightened his stomach with a haunting sense of dread he knew all too well. The stillness suggested that someone was in pain, perhaps on the brink of death. Thomas, his legs trembling beneath him, made his way to the window. The overturned wagon lay still, an eerie silence enveloping the scene, devoid of any sign of life or motion. Vultures had begun to circle above, dark silhouettes contrasting sharply with the relentless azure expanse of the sky. He averted his gaze from the window, only to find his reflection staring back at him from Sarah's weathered mirror. The figure reflected in the glass appeared foreign, with gaunt cheeks adorned by stubble, eyes bloodshot from excess and restless nights, and hair cascading untamed. Sarah would not recognize him now, yet she would possess the insight into his next steps. Thomas seized his medical bag from the shadowy corner, sending a cloud of dust swirling from the worn leather. Within, his instruments rested, tarnished yet whole, scalpels, forceps, and bottles of medicine that perhaps still held their efficacy. His hands recalled the heft of every tool, the function they had once fulfilled. The scorching desert sun enveloped him, striking with the force of a tangible impact as he crossed the threshold into the open air. The sun blazed overhead, transforming the atmosphere into a dance of shimmering heat waves. Thomas narrowed his eyes at the debris, his heart racing, fueled by more than just the whiskey and the sweltering heat. What if he had arrived too late? What if his talents had decayed alongside his spirit? What if he exacerbated the situation? The thought spiraled endlessly as he navigated the hardpan, his boots sinking into sand that burned like walking through flames. As he drew nearer, the wagon expanded in his view, revealing itself to be a humble farm cart, the sort commonly employed by families journeying from one settlement to another. Then he heard a woman's voice flowing in rapid Spanish. She still drew breath at the very least. Yet her words resonated with a sense of urgency that compelled Thomas to accelerate, even as the fire in his lungs intensified. Upon arriving at the wagon, he discovered her trapped beneath the wooden side, her dark hair stained with blood, her face a canvas of shock and agony. She appeared to be no older than 20, clad in unadorned cotton that had become tattered and soiled from the wreck. Yet it was the little boy next to her that caused Thomas to momentarily lose his breath. The young boy nestled in the sand, tears streaming down his cheeks, his tiny hands clutching a wound on his forehead. He seemed no older than 6 or 7, the very age Timothy had been when the fever claimed him. Identical dark hair, matching terrified eyes, and a familiar posture, all emerging when the world grew too daunting to comprehend. "Ayúdanos," the woman whispered, her voice trembling as she switched to broken English. "Please, help us." Thomas sank to his knees beside them, his medical training resurfacing despite the 3 years of neglect. The woman's leg was ensnared yet remained unbroken. He was able to perceive that much. The boy's head wound appeared more severe than it truly was, oozing blood freely yet lacking the depth to pose any real danger. "May I inquire about your name?" Thomas inquired of the woman, his voice gravelly from neglect. "Elena," she inhaled sharply. "This is my son, Miguel." Our horse was startled by something, causing the wagon to flip over. Thomas nodded, his gaze sharp and discerning, cutting through the chaos of blood and fear to reveal the underlying truth that lay beneath. Elena found herself in desperate need of assistance to escape, and both were grappling with the oppressive weight of heat exhaustion. Yet survival was within reach, provided he could recall the means to rescue them. Miguel observed him with those well-known dark eyes, tears carving paths through the dust on his cheeks. The boy uttered a phrase in Spanish, the inflection suggesting it was a question. "He inquires whether you are a doctor," as Elena translated on a weekly basis. Thomas paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. Did he still hold the title of doctor? Has the title endured 3 years of indulgence and despair? Did ability endure when intent had vanished? Miguel extended a small hand, gently brushing against Thomas's medical bag, his eyes alight with a glimmer of hope, reminiscent of the way Timothy once looked when he presented injured birds to his father for healing. Indeed, Thomas found himself uttering the words, "I am a doctor." The words tasted peculiar on his tongue, reminiscent of a language he had nearly left behind. Yet as he unzipped his medical bag and set to work, his hands danced with a familiarity that felt instinctive. The instruments rested comfortably in his grasp, extensions of a dormant will that had yet to fade away. Elena's legs slipped free with surprising ease, the wagon having formed a protective pocket that shielded her from the brunt of the weight. Miguel's head wound required nothing more than a thorough cleaning and a modest bandage. Both were parched and weary, yet nothing that a little rest and hydration couldn't remedy. As Thomas toiled, a sensation began to awaken within him, a feeling long entombed beneath layers of sorrow and spirits, so deeply buried that its presence had faded from his memory. Intent, the straightforward and pure intention of mending what has been fractured. Yet, as hope began to spark anew, Thomas remained unable to dismiss the unsettling notion that this was no mere coincidence. Elena and Miguel had come to rest within view of the only place for miles where a physician might be found, a doctor who had long abandoned the practice, residing in a cabin that had transformed into a mausoleum for shattered aspirations. What were the odds? Amidst the endless expanse of the desert, what were the odds? Miguel gazed up at him with those trusting eyes, a smile breaking forth. The first genuine smile Thomas had witnessed in 3 long years. In that instant, Thomas found himself pondering whether some miracles might not originate from the heavens after all. Perhaps a few miracles emerged from the bravery it took to respond when they came knocking at your door. Crimson, that was the first sight that met Thomas's eyes as he turned the woman onto her back. Not much, yet sufficient to convey that she had endured pain beyond mere sun and thirst. A slender ribbon of crimson snaked down from her temple, a testament to a sharp intrusion, while her breaths emerged in quick, agonizing bursts. Kneeling beside his mother, the boy Miguel felt his small hands tremble as he desperately attempted to rouse her from her slumber. "Mama, please," he whispered, his words dancing between Spanish and English, much like frightened children often do. "Kindly rouse yourself from slumber." Thomas experienced a fissure within his chest, a familiar, desperate fear that had stared back at him from his own reflection 3 years prior, the same helpless affection of a child witnessing a parent fade into the distance. "She's going to be okay," Thomas heard himself say, though uncertainty lingered in his mind. His hands acted on instinct, feeling for her pulse, gently raising her eyelids to observe if her pupils reacted to the light. The ancient skills surged forth, reminiscent of a torrent bursting through a fractured barrier. Miguel observed each action with keen interest. "Are you truly a doctor? I exist." The words tasted peculiar on his tongue. Indeed, yet somewhat out of practice. With a steady grip, Thomas lifted Elena into his arms while Miguel followed closely in their wake. The cabin exuded a new essence with the presence of others, transforming from a mere tomb into a warm embrace of home. He placed Elena gently on his bed, the first to occupy it alongside him in 3 long years. Her fever blazed fiercely against his palm. Desert fever, perhaps, poses a significant risk if neglected, yet it remains manageable if addressed promptly. Thomas rummaged through his medical bag, a sense of astonishment washing over him as he discovered that the majority of his supplies remained intact. Tablets of aspirin, rolls of bandages, and alcohol for sanitizing wounds. "What is the name of your mother?" Thomas inquired softly while tending to the wound on Elena's forehead. "Elena Maria Vasquez," Miguel said, enunciating each syllable with precision. "She is the finest chef throughout Mexico, crafting tortillas that delight the palate like soft clouds." Thomas wore a smile, undeterred by the circumstances surrounding him. The boy's words wove vivid images that illuminated the shadowy cabin. "What about your father?" Miguel's expression turned grave. "Papa has joined the angels now. Men of ill repute descended upon our village. Mama insisted we must flee or reunite with Papa in the heavens above." The straightforward words struck Thomas with the force of a tangible impact. This child had experienced the same loss of a father that Thomas had felt with the loss of his son. Varied ailments, yet the sorrow remains unchanged. Yet, within Miguel's gaze, a flicker of hope remained bright. He continued to hold on to the hope that his mother would awaken. For the following hour, Thomas immersed himself in his work. He offered Elena small sips of water, blended with salt and sugar, a time-honored remedy for ailments brought on by the desert. With tender hands that recalled the art of healing, he meticulously cleaned her wounds and wrapped them with care. Above all, he engaged with Miguel, soothing the boy as his mother battled her fever. "Share with me the stories of your village," Thomas inquired as he once more assessed Elena's temperature. Improved, yet still excessive, Miguel's eyes sparkled with excitement. "We kept a small flock of 5 chickens and a goat we affectionately named Esperanza. It signifies hope." She offered the most delightful milk. His voice took on a melancholic tone. "They are deeply missed." "What other things do you long for?" "The chime of the church bells." Each morning the bells would chime and Mama would prepare breakfast. As she prepared her meals, her voice would rise in song. Miguel let a gentle melody escape his lips, soft and sweet. Elena stirred, her voice the most enchanting in the world, as if summoned by her son's words. Her eyes fluttered open, a haze of confusion clouding their focus. She attempted to rise, a wave of panic washing over her features as the unsettling truth dawned upon her. She was in an unfamiliar setting. "Miguel," she gasped, her eyes darting around in a frenzy. "I have arrived, Mama." The boy hurried to her side, grasping her hand firmly. "The physician rescued us from peril. We are secure." Elena's gaze settled on Thomas, examining his features with the meticulous scrutiny of one who had mastered the art of skepticism towards unfamiliar faces. Yet there was something in his gaze that seemed to offer her comfort, for she let her shoulders ease just a bit. "Thank you," she murmured, her English laced with a charming accent. I believed we would meet our end in the desert." "You're safe now," Thomas said, his words carrying a weight he hadn't felt in years, a promise meant for both of you. Yet, as he uttered those words, an unfamiliar sound drifted in from beyond the threshold. Majestic creatures of grace and power. A multitude of horses galloping swiftly over the arid expanse of the desert. Their hoofbeats intensified, resonating with a sense of urgency. Furious voices drifted through the twilight air. Thomas approached the window, his heart sinking as he beheld the scene before him. 6 riders galloped fiercely toward his cabin, their horses pounding the earth beneath them. He identified the lead rider as Sheriff Davidson, a familiar figure from town. The man's visage bore the weight of determination, etched with stern contours, while those who flanked him appeared poised for conflict. Elena must have perceived a shift in Thomas's expression, for she fought to elevate her posture. What could it be? Miguel nestled against his mother, an instinctive awareness of impending peril coursing through him. Thomas observed the riders advance, meticulously assessing the distances and possibilities that lay before him. They would arrive in mere moments. Escape was an illusion, a mirage fading into the shadows. Elena lacked the strength to embark on a journey, while Miguel remained merely a child. The physician, who had evaded accountability for 3 long years, now stood at a crossroads that would shape the trajectory of his existence. Stand firm and defend those unfamiliar souls who had unwittingly entered his realm, or yield and allow fate to unfold as it would. Outside, the horses grew increasingly restless, and Thomas understood that his 3 years of concealment were nearing their conclusion. "Who are those individuals?" Elena's voice trembled as she leaned against the pillows, her nurturing instincts surging forth to conquer her frailty. With a swift motion, Thomas assisted her in sitting up correctly, his thoughts a whirlwind of activity. "Sheriff Davidson and a few others from town are not here for a friendly chat." Miguel ascended onto the bed next to his mother, the earlier delight giving way to a keen awareness that only those children who have encountered true peril can understand. "Are they the villains, Mama?" Elena enveloped her son in a warm embrace, and in that fleeting moment, Thomas witnessed her metamorphosis from a thankful patient to a fiercely protective mother. "I'm not quite sure, my child." The rhythmic thud of hoofbeats ceased, and Thomas caught the sound of boots striking the earth, spurs chiming softly, as hushed voices deliberated on their tactics. He had witnessed enough of the harsh realities of the wild to understand the likely outcome of this situation. "Listen to me," Thomas said, kneeling beside the bed, ensuring Miguel could meet his gaze. "Regardless of the circumstances, you remain by your mother's side. Remain indoors until I summon you." "Yet, what if they cause you pain?" Miguel inquired with the raw candor of youth. Thomas was taken aback by the question. At what moment did he begin to hold significance for this boy? When did their perception of him start to outweigh the significance of a bottle of whiskey? "They won't," Thomas remarked, clinging to the hope that it was indeed true. Elena grasped his arm as he rose to his feet. "Doctor, you fail to grasp the situation. In Mexico, when men such as these seek out individuals like us," she left her words hanging in the air. She was under no obligation to do so. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, drew near to the door. Thomas had perhaps 30 seconds before everything transformed. "Elena," he implored with a sense of urgency, "is there anything you've kept from me? Is there anything that could shed light on their presence here?" She shared a glance with Miguel, a wordless understanding flowing between mother and son. "We witnessed something," she murmured. "On the eve of our disorientation, men were herding cattle that were not theirs, white men conversing in English." In Thomas's mind, pieces fell into alignment. Cattle rustling had plagued the border for months, a persistent issue that refused to fade into the background. Had Elena and Miguel been witnesses to the unfolding events? Had they been able to pinpoint the true culprits? A fist struck the door with urgency, demanding entry. "Open up, Doc. We need to talk." Thomas cast a final glance at Elena and Miguel, the woman who had materialized at his doorstep as if she were the very solution to the prayers he had long ceased to utter. The boy, with laughter that echoed through the hollow cabin, infused the space with an essence that teetered on the brink of joy. 3 years prior, he had allowed sorrow to transform him into a timid soul. He had retreated from the world, evading responsibility and the chance of ever caring for another soul again. Yet, as he gazed into Miguel's trusting eyes and observed Elena's quiet courage, Thomas came to understand that a choice lay before him. He stood before the door, contemplating whether to step through as the shattered soul he had become over the past 3 years, or as the doctor he once was, the man Sarah had chosen, the father Timothy had admired. "Remain here," he instructed, his footsteps measured as he approached the door. "Doc," the voice from beyond became increasingly impatient. "It is clear that the Mexicans are present within that context." Thomas hesitated, his fingers resting on the latch. From his vantage point by the window, he observed Davidson and his men arranged in a semicircle, their hands poised on their weapons. Polished, methodical, formidable. Yet, they remained unaware of the knowledge that Thomas possessed. Unbeknownst to them, Elena and Miguel stood as witnesses, not as criminals. They had come to extinguish any looming threats to the operation they were safeguarding, which signified that Thomas was not merely unlocking his door to assist 2 unfamiliar faces. He was opening it to confront the insidious corruption that had been gnawing at frontier towns like a relentless plague. As he moved forward, Elena's voice floated gently behind him, serenading Miguel in the melodic cadence of Spanish. The familiar lullaby melody the boy had hummed earlier now resonated with a newfound gravity. A mother's final embrace, a tender solace for her child as the tempest approached. The sound fortified a profound essence within Thomas's chest. After 3 long years, he found himself free from the weight of his losses. He pondered what he could possibly salvage. Dr. Elena spoke gently, assuring that no matter what unfolds, Miguel and I will forever cherish your kindness. Thomas glanced back at them once more. Elena's dark eyes possessed a strength that echoed the courage Sarah had shown in her final days. Miguel grasped his mother's hand tightly, yet held his chin high, prepared to embody courage inspired by the bravery of the adults surrounding him. They placed their trust in him, utterly and without reservation. The manner in which Timothy once relied on him to investigate for monsters lurking beneath the bed, Sarah's unwavering faith in him to choose wisely, even when every path seemed fraught with peril. The relentless pounding on the door echoed once more forceful than before. "This is your final opportunity, Doctor." With a determined posture, Thomas squared his shoulders and pushed the door open, stepping into the unknown that awaited him. Yet, as he moved, an unsettling sound reached his ears, chilling his very core, the unmistakable thud of more horses drawing near from the opposite direction. The true dilemma lay not in his ability to shield Elena and Miguel from the wrath of 6 furious men. The inquiry lingered. Would any of them endure the impending force advancing across the vast desert expanse? The sound of horses shattered the desert stillness like a clap of thunder. Thomas observed a minimum of 6 riders racing swiftly over the sand, dust clouds trailing behind them like vengeful phantoms. Sheriff Cole Davidson rode at the forefront, his badge glinting in the afternoon sun, a beacon of caution. Thomas sensed his heart thudding relentlessly against his ribs. Elena reached for Miguel's hand, drawing him nearer with a gentle tug. The boy's eyes widened, reflecting a deep-seated fear born from an understanding of the power wielded by men with guns. "Stay inside," Thomas whispered to them, but Elena simply shook her head in defiance. "No, we confronted this together," she stated. Though her voice quivered, she maintained her stature with unwavering resolve. The horses came to a halt 20 feet away from the cabin. Davidson descended first, his boots striking the earth with a resounding thud. The remaining men remained mounted, creating a half-circle around Thomas's dwelling. Every man bore a rifle upon his shoulder. Every visage bore a scowl of fury. "Well, well, Doc," Davidson remarked, tilting his hat back. "I understand you've been entertaining some uninvited visitors." Thomas advanced, positioning himself protectively between the men and the entrance to his home. Assistance was required. That is the role of physicians. What doctors do, Jake Morrison said, spitting into the dust, is help Americans, not those who cross the border and take from honest folks. Miguel nestled against his mother. Elena's hand rested on Thomas's shoulder, and he sensed her trembling. "What constitutes theft?" Thomas inquired. "When I stumbled upon them, they were on the brink of death." Davidson retrieved a sheet of paper. "A report has come in indicating that Mexican bandits struck the Wilson Ranch 2 nights ago, acquired 5 cattle and a horse. A woman fitting her description was observed in their company." "That's impossible," Thomas declared. "Elena has graced this place with her presence for 3 days now. She struggled to maintain her footing." "Is it Elena?" Morrison let out a hearty laugh, yet the sound carried no trace of amusement. "Becoming quite chummy with the wrong crowd, aren't you, Doc?" Elena's voice emerged from behind Thomas. Her English emerged slowly yet distinctly. "I accept nothing from anyone. My son and I, we flee only from the grasp of death." "Reserve it for the judge, Senora," Davidson remarked. He cast his gaze upon Thomas. "Make way, Doc. We are returning them to the town." Thomas sensed a chill unfurling within him, a cold weight anchoring itself in his stomach. He had witnessed the fate that befell Mexicans in the Copper Creek jail. The majority never reached the courtroom. "No," he replied. The utterance caught everyone off guard, even Thomas, who appeared taken aback. Davidson's hand instinctively reached for his gun. "Please, let's not complicate things unnecessarily, Doctor. These individuals are not your concern." "They turned into my dilemma the moment they rapped on my door," Thomas responded. His voice resonated with increasing strength. "I remain steadfast in my patience." Carl Stevens, one of the other men, urged his horse forward, drawing nearer. What about your patients? Doctor, have you been indulging in alcohol once more? They are nothing but thieves and murderers. A frail woman stood there. Her son, Thomas, retorted sharply. Observe them closely. Could Elena be mistaken for someone who could wrestle a cow? Elena was petite and slender, her dress draping loosely over her delicate figure. Miguel scarcely reached the height of Thomas's waist. The notion of them pilfering cattle was nearly amusing, yet the men remained silent. Morrison remarked that Mexicans possess a certain cunning. Perhaps she merely serves as the lookout. Perhaps the boys have been trained to slip through fences. Miguel leaned in close and murmured a few words in Spanish to his mother. Elena responded, her gaze shifting to the men. She replied that he inquired about the reason for the men's anger. I convey to him that for some, the heart remains shut against the warmth of kindness. Davidson's face flushed with a deep crimson hue. Your heart will remain forever closed if you don't silence your words, woman. In that moment, Thomas took a step forward, so close that I could almost catch the scent of tobacco lingering on Davidson's breath. Sheriff, he said softly, I'm asking you to leave. These individuals are safeguarded by my watchful care. What about your safeguard? Davidson let out a hearty laugh. Doctor, you find yourself a solitary figure, lost in the vastness of desolation, with the bottle as your only companion. What kind of protection will you offer anyone? Thomas felt the words strike him with the force of blows. As the truth unfolded, it became evident that he was indeed a drunk. He had existed in solitude, retreating from the world beyond his door. Yet, as he observed Elena and Miguel, a forgotten memory resurfaced within him. He recalled the sensation of rescuing a life. Perhaps I embodied those qualities, Thomas remarked. Yet, I am also the man who ensured the survival of this woman and child when the desert sought to claim them. And I refuse to allow you to complete what the desert began. The stillness extended, delicate and fragile like a spider's web. Even the horses appeared to feel the palpable tension in the air. Then Davidson unsheathed his weapon. This is your final opportunity, Doctor. Make way, or we will make you move. Thomas cast a glance at the gun before shifting his gaze to meet Davidson's eyes. He had encountered those eyes previously, in the expressions of individuals who averted their gaze when his family met their tragic end. A chilling assurance that remains unchanged. A parallel readiness to inflict pain on others, all in the pursuit of personal solace. Yet this time he stood his ground. Elena, he uttered, without glancing back. Bring Miguel indoors. Thomas, no, she whispered. Proceed with it. He listened as their footsteps receded from the door. In the sweltering embrace of the desert sun, he found himself alone, surrounded by 6 armed men. You're making a grave error, Doc, Davidson remarked. Thomas wore a smile. For the first time in years, it resonated with authenticity. Sheriff, I have erred in numerous ways. However, rescuing that woman and child does not fall among those priorities. The firearm in Davidson's grasp shimmered under the sunlight. Thomas observed the man's finger poised delicately on the trigger. Yet he remained still. Elena's hand trembled as she gazed through the narrow opening of the window. In the open air, Thomas faced a daunting challenge, standing solitary before a group of 6 armed men. She had witnessed this scene before in Mexico, when the bandits descended upon her husband. Valiant souls perished as wicked hearts observed. Yet, this occasion would unfold in a distinct manner. This time, she would not merely conceal herself and hope for the best. Miguel, she whispered to her son, do you recall the tale that Papa shared with you? On the subject of courage in the face of others' hesitation. The boy nodded, his deep-set eyes reflecting a gravity that belied his youth. Elena delved into her bag, retrieving a leather pouch with a sense of purpose. Within lay papers, aged from frequent touch yet still legible. Documents that possessed the potential to transform the entire landscape. She pressed her lips gently to Miguel's forehead. Remain in this place. Mother has a task at hand. Before doubt could take hold, Elena stepped outside. The men shifted their gaze toward her. Astonishment etched upon their features. I told you to get inside, Thomas began to utter. Yet Elena lifted her hand. Sheriff Davidson, she called out. Her voice resonated through the desert air with newfound strength. Are you curious about my identity? I must share this with you. Davidson maintained his weapon's aim on Thomas, yet turned his gaze toward Elena. Lady, this isn't the moment for... My name is Elena Vasquez, she interjected. spouse of Sergeant Carlos Vasquez, the Army of Mexico, my partner in life. He met his end in a valiant struggle against Apache raiders who dared to invade your land. She raised the leather pouch aloft. The papers, they bear the signature of your territorial governor. It is said that Mexico and America now collaborate harmoniously. It is said that the family of Carlos Vasquez receives safe passage. Morrison let out a hearty laugh. Documents can be forged, madam. Not these papers, a new voice interjected. All eyes shifted. A solitary figure on horseback perched upon the ridge, gazing down at the cabin below. He donned a unique uniform adorned with brass buttons that glimmered in the light. The Army of Mexico, yet adorned with American military ribbons upon his chest as well. Captain Alejandro Morales descended the slope, his steed navigating the rocky terrain with caution. Following him were two additional riders, each adorned with badges that were unfamiliar to Thomas. Davidson's weapon trembled in his grasp. "Who the hell are you?" Captain Morales serves as the crucial link between the Mexican and American forces. The newcomer responded. He slid off the horse and strode directly toward Elena, disregarding the weapons aimed at him. They exchanged a flurry of rapid Spanish for a brief moment. Elena's eyes brimmed with tears. She presented him with the leather pouch. Morales scrutinized the documents before turning his gaze to Davidson. "Sheriff, you stand on the precipice of igniting an international incident. This woman stands as the widow of a Mexican hero, a figure who met his fate while valiantly safeguarding American settlers." "That's impossible," Stephen declared. "She's merely a trespasser at the edge of the line." Morales retrieved additional papers from the depths of his saddlebags. 3 months have passed since Sergeant Carlos Vasquez fell, valiantly protecting the Martinez Ranch from the onslaught of Apache raiders. 20 lives of Americans preserved. The widow and her son received safe passage to reunite with family in California. He regarded Elena with a sense of reverence. Senora Vasquez found herself adrift in the vast expanse of the desert, enveloped by the fury of a relentless sandstorm. Our quest to find her has spanned several weeks. Thomas experienced a profound sense of relief that made his legs tremble beneath him. Elena was not fleeing from wrongdoers. She raced toward her family, clutching the memory of a heroic husband close to her heart. Yet Davidson remained resolute, unwilling to concede defeat. "What evidence do we have to confirm the authenticity of these papers?" A companion of Morales, a gentleman bearing the emblem of the United States, the badge of marshal, advanced with purpose. "It is because I personally affixed my signature, Sheriff. My name is Marshal William Tucker. It was at the Martinez Ranch that Sergeant Vasquez chose to make his stand." Tucker's voice resonated with the heavy burden of a soul acquainted with the harsh realities of violence. Carlos Vasquez plunged headfirst into the hail of gunfire, driven by an unwavering resolve to rescue American children. He endured 3 arrows and a bullet, yet he continued to battle fiercely until every Apache lay slain or fled in terror. Elena brushed away the tears that had gathered in her eyes. He often proclaimed that all children deserve protection, regardless of whose they are. Thomas gazed at Miguel, who stood tall and proud, even as the intricacies of the English language eluded him. The lad possessed the courageous gaze of his father. "So you see, Sheriff," Morales continued, "this woman is not a criminal. She is the kin of a man who sacrificed his life for your kind." The doctor inclined his head toward Thomas. He rescued the kin of a champion. Davidson gradually lowered his weapon. His face bore a look of confusion, reminiscent of a man emerging from a troubling nightmare. "Yet the cattle theft," he murmured feebly. "Various raiders," Tucker responded. "This morning we intercepted them, a mere 20 miles to the south. 4 men adorned in the fierce colors of Apache war paint. There were no women or children accompanying them." Morrison spat in the dust once more, yet this time a sense of shame washed over him, eclipsing the anger that had previously marked his demeanor. "Well, I must say, this is quite surprising." Stevens removed his hat, letting his fingers glide through his hair. "Madam, we erred." Elena inclined her head with elegance. "Errors arise when trepidation takes residence within the soul. Yet fear possesses the capacity for healing, much like an ailment." Thomas advanced, a sense of renewed breath filling his lungs. "Elena, why did you keep your husband and the papers from me?" Her smile was tinged with sadness. "Would it have made a difference? You rescued us in our time of need, not out of any sense of entitlement on our part. That is what defines you as a commendable individual." Captain Morales strode towards Thomas, offering his hand in greeting. "Dr. Mexico is indebted to you. You tended to the family of a hero in their time of need, when they had nothing to lean on." As Thomas clasped the captain's hand, an undeniable change stirred within him. For 3 long years, he had held on to the conviction that God had forsaken him. Perhaps the divine had been patiently biding its time, awaiting the perfect moment to reveal that his journey was far from complete. Miguel dashed toward his mother, wrapping his small arms around her legs in a warm embrace. Elena gathered him close, murmuring soothing Spanish phrases. "What happens now?" Thomas inquired. Morales wore a smile. At this moment, Senora Vasquez and her son press onward toward California, accompanied by a suitable escort this time. As the sun dipped below the horizon of the desert, casting a tapestry of orange and red across the sky, Thomas came to a realization that took him by surprise. He wished for them to stay. The thunderous gallop of 20 horses, racing across the sun-baked desert floor, rendered everyone motionless, as if they had been sculpted from stone in the sweltering heat. Sheriff Davidson pivoted sharply, his weapon still trained on Thomas, but his eyes widened in alarm as he noticed dust clouds billowing up from 3 distinct directions. The Mexican cavalry arrived first, their vibrant blue uniforms standing out against the earthy tones of the landscape. Trailing behind them were additional riders, some of whom Thomas recognized from the town, while others were unfamiliar figures he had yet to encounter. "What on earth?" Davidson murmured, easing his grip on the weapon just a fraction. Elena inhaled sharply and moved closer, her hand instinctively clutching her heart. "Captain Morales," she called out in Spanish, then seamlessly transitioned to English. "Captain Morales!" The lead rider reined in his horse, halting mere feet from the taut assembly before him. His uniform bore the marks of dust yet retained a sense of cleanliness, while his expression was a blend of seriousness and kindness. As Thomas dismounted, he observed the man's movements, each step exuding an air of authority, as if he were accustomed to commanding respect and eliciting obedience. "Elena Vasquez," the captain declared, lifting his hat in a gesture of respect. "Our quest to find you has spanned many weeks." It was Davidson who discovered his voice first. "Now, just a moment there, Captain. This land belongs to America. This is not a place for you." Captain Morales wore a smile, though it lacked warmth. "Are you Sheriff Davidson, if I'm not mistaken? Your telegram reached us 3 days prior. Quite intriguing. Your inquiry regarding the notorious bandits of Mexico." Thomas sensed the grip of Miguel's hand grow firmer in his own. The boy may not have grasped every word, yet he sensed the peril in the atmosphere, akin to the charged air preceding a tempest. "Indeed," Davidson declared with a sense of pride, "these individuals are engaged in criminal activities, most likely cattle thieves. You are mistaken in that regard, Sheriff." The captain delved into his saddlebag, retrieving a leather folder with a deliberate motion. "Elena Vasquez is not a criminal. She mourns the loss of Sergeant Carlos Vasquez, her husband, who fell in battle against Apache raiders just 6 months prior. He rescued a whole community of American families close to the border." Elena's tears flowed, yet they carried a weight that Thomas had never witnessed before. These tears flowed with a blend of relief and lingering sorrow. "Her husband was a hero," Captain Morales continued. "Upon his passing, Elena was meant to be granted protection and a secure journey to her family in California. Corrupt officials absconded with her money, abandoning her to perish in the desolate expanse of the desert." The captain's voice took on a steely edge. "For months, we have been in pursuit of these officials. They have taken from countless families, leading to numerous tragedies. Elena and her son stand as witnesses to the unfolding of their crimes." Jake Morrison shifted with an air of unease. "That doesn't change anything. They remain undocumented individuals. A new voice has indeed emerged. It transforms the entire landscape." All eyes were drawn to Judge William Harrison as he approached on his sleek black steed. Thomas was well acquainted with the judge. He stood as one of the rare honest souls in the territory, a man whose devotion to justice eclipsed any interest in the machinations of politics. "Judge Harrison," Davidson remarked, his voice wavering with uncertainty, "what draws you to this place?" "Your telegram, Sheriff. The one you forwarded to the authorities in Mexico." Judge Harrison descended from his mount with deliberate grace. The creaking of his aged bones echoed through the silence, captivating and thought-provoking material. particularly the section where you portrayed the woman as perilous and the child as likely afflicted. Thomas sensed the heat of his anger beginning to swell within him. Did you characterize Miguel as having a disease? It was just, Davidson began, but the judge raised his hand to interrupt. Sheriff Davidson, I have communicated with the territorial governor. Elena Vasquez and her son have received special protected status. They enjoy the direct safeguarding of both the United States and Mexican governments. The captain inclined his head in acknowledgement. She bears documents bearing the signature of Governor Anson Safford himself. Any injury to her or her son would be regarded as a declaration of war between our nations. Elena delicately reached into the folds of her dress, retrieving a small leather pouch with a sense of purpose. From it, she extracted documents adorned with crimson seals, exuding an air of authority. I tried to tell you, she said softly. I have permission to be here. Davidson's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, a vivid testament to his mingled feelings of humiliation and fury. How could I have possibly known? She is merely a woman of Mexican descent. A Mexican woman fluent in 3 languages, possesses reading and writing skills that surpass those of many men in your town, and her husband made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of American lives. Judge Harrison declared with a firm voice, a woman who has endured more suffering in half a year than most will encounter in an entire lifetime. Thomas gazed at Elena, seeing her in a completely different light. She had appeared delicate when he discovered her, yet now he recognized the resilience that had propelled her through the desert, the sharpness that had ensured her and Miguel's survival. There's more, Captain Morales remarked, stepping closer to Elena. The culprits behind the theft of your money have been identified. They find themselves confined, biding their time as they await the trial ahead. The pension belonging to your husband has been reinstated, and the American government has consented to provide compensation for the hardships you have endured. Elena's knees gave way, and in a swift motion, Thomas grasped her arm. What is the significance of this? She murmured softly. It means you're free, Thomas said softly. It signifies your safety. Miguel raised his gaze to his mother, then shifted it to Thomas. Are we allowed to remain here? Judge Harrison wore a smile. My dear son, you are welcome to remain for as long as your heart desires. This nation carries an obligation to your family that can never be entirely fulfilled. Sheriff Davidson secured his weapon, his expression clouded by a mix of shame and fury. This is not the end, he murmured, though his voice lacked any genuine menace at that moment. As the different factions started to break apart, Captain Morales made his way to Thomas for a private conversation. Doctor, Elena has shared with me the remarkable actions you took, how you rescued them when others would have turned their backs. Thomas gave a slight shrug. Any reasonable individual would have acted in a similar manner. The captain responded with unwavering resolve. No individual. You gambled with your life, your reputation, and everything you held dear, for those unfamiliar souls who possessed nothing to give in exchange. He delved into his pocket and retrieved a small silver medal. This was once in the possession of Sergeant Vasquez. He would wish for you to possess it. It is bestowed upon those who demonstrate bravery that surpasses all expectations. Thomas grasped the medal, sensing its heft resting in his hand. On one side, there resided the figure of a guardian angel. On the other side were words in Spanish, para los que protegen a los inocentes, for those who safeguard the innocent. Thank you, Thomas uttered, his voice heavy with feeling. As the sun dipped below the horizon of the desert, casting a tapestry of gold and crimson across the sky, Thomas understood that everything had transformed. It was not solely for Elena and Miguel, it was for him as well. The resentment and fury that had tainted his heart for 3 long years were finally starting to dissipate. As Thomas stood alongside Elena and Miguel, observing the remnants of the confrontation fade into the vast desert twilight, he sensed a feeling that had eluded him for quite some time. A flicker of hope ignited within him. Half a year had passed, and now the joyous sound of children's laughter filled the air of the medical clinic, a place that had once been nothing more than Thomas's solitary cabin. The structure had expanded since that sweltering August day when Elena and Miguel had emerged from the desert's embrace. Thomas had constructed 2 additional rooms, one dedicated to his growing medical practice and the other to accommodate Elena's sewing business. What was once a realm of quiet despair now resonated with the vibrant echoes of existence and optimism. "Dr. Tom!" Miguel shouted, storming through the front door with the force of a whirlwind. Mother has instructed me to inform you that the bread is ready. Thomas lifted his gaze from the pages of his medical journal, a smile spreading across his face as he regarded the boy who had come to mean so much to him. Miguel had experienced a notable growth spurt during the winter months, his face now more robust and vibrant. What mattered most was that the fear which had lingered in his shadowed gaze had vanished, giving way to the innate curiosity of a lively child. "Inform your mother that I shall arrive in 5 minutes," Thomas remarked, shutting his book with a soft thud. "I simply must complete the transcription of this cough medicine recipe." Miguel sprang on his toes, brimming with anticipation. "Captain Morales is joining us for dinner this evening." He returned with gifts from the vibrant streets of Mexico City. Thomas discovered that Elena and Captain Morales shared a familial bond, connected through the lineage of Elena's deceased husband. The captain made his rounds every few months, a blend of duty and a genuine concern for the well-being of Elena and Miguel. Thomas harbored a suspicion that these visits held deeper significance beyond mere familial obligation, yet he chose to keep such musings to himself. "That's wonderful," Thomas remarked, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "Did he mention the type of gifts?" "Books," Miguel exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "Books adorned with images of birds and animals, and he's guiding me in writing in both Spanish and English." Thomas was astonished by the rapid pace at which Miguel absorbed knowledge. The young lad surpassed the reading abilities of numerous adults in the town, and his innate intelligence left all who encountered him in awe. Elena envisioned a future where he would one day attend the territorial university. As Thomas strolled from his clinic to the main house, he observed the transformations that had reshaped not only his property but the entire landscape around him. Where once only sagebrush and barren desert stretched endlessly, now flourished a quaint garden where Elena nurtured her vegetables and herbs. She imparted to Thomas the wisdom of which plants held medicinal properties, a legacy inherited from her grandmother. The very essence of the house had transformed as well. Elena's presence lingered in every corner. Vibrant woven rugs adorned the floors, pottery brimming with wildflowers, the aroma of freshly baked bread and spices banishing the once pervasive scent of whiskey and despair that lingered in the air. "Thomas," Elena's voice floated in from the kitchen, imbued with a warmth that felt like an embrace, arriving at just the right moment. "The bread has just emerged from the oven, warm and inviting." Elena had transformed just like everything around her. The terrified, almost shattered woman he had saved had vanished. In her stead stood an individual brimming with confidence and competence, a person who had rediscovered her inner strength. She had woven herself into the fabric of the community, not merely as a seamstress, but as a healer in her own right, a person whom others sought for guidance and solace. "It smells incredible," Thomas remarked, taking the warm slice she offered him. "You're indulging me, aren't you?" "Good," Elena said, laughter dancing in her voice. "When we discovered you, your frame was alarmingly slender, a solitary figure amidst the vast arid expanse." Thomas found himself conceding that she was indeed correct. He had acquired weight, muscle, and, above all, a sense of purpose. His medical practice thrived like never before. Whispers traveled through the community about the physician who extended his care to all, unbound by the constraints of wealth or origin. Individuals journeyed from great distances to witness him. "Where has our esteemed guest of honor gone?" Thomas inquired, glancing about. "He stands outside with Miguel, gazing at the new horse," Elena remarked, a faint blush creeping across her cheeks as she spoke of the captain. Through the window, Thomas observed Captain Morales kneeling next to Miguel, both engrossed in the examination of the young horse that had been bestowed upon them by the Mexican government. It served as a gesture of gratitude towards Thomas for his attentive care of Elena and Miguel, though Thomas harbored a suspicion that Captain Morales had orchestrated it himself. "Elena," Thomas began with a measured tone, "I've been pondering something." She glanced away from her culinary task, her face a blend of curiosity and patience. "This place has come to feel more like your home than mine," he continued. "Both you and Miguel have resurrected it. I found myself contemplating what are your thoughts on formalizing this." Elena's eyes grew wide with surprise. "Could you clarify what you mean? Would you be open to the idea of joining me as a partner in the clinic?" He paused for a moment, then pressed on. "Would you contemplate making this your permanent home? Not merely as guests, but as family?" Elena remained silent for what felt like an eternity, causing Thomas to fret that he had overstepped, that perhaps he had pressed too firmly. Then she smiled, and it resembled the sun piercing through the clouds. Thomas, as we emerged from that vast desert, I felt as though divine presence had forsaken us. I believed we were destined to perish in solitude, lost to the annals of time. She extended her hand and grasped his, yet we discovered something far more profound than mere salvation. We discovered our sanctuary. Is that an affirmative? Thomas inquired, barely able to draw a breath. That's a yes, Elena murmured gently. In that instant, Miguel charged through the door with Captain Morales right behind him. The captain stood tall, a figure of striking handsomeness, his kind eyes and gentle demeanor effortlessly putting even the most timid children at ease in his presence. Dr. Whitmore, the captain said, offering his hand in greeting. It is always a delight to encounter you. Kindly refer to me as Thomas. Anyone who counts Elena as a friend is like family to me. Captain Morales wore a smile. I find myself compelled to bring something to your attention, both of you in fact. With a deliberate motion, he delved into his jacket and retrieved a document that exuded an air of authority. A proposition has been put forth by the territorial governor. He aims to create a lasting medical clinic in this location, catering to the needs of both American and Mexican families residing along the border. You shall assume the role of the chief physician. Elena would assume the role of head nurse and translator. Thomas and Elena shared a look, a spark of excitement igniting in the air around them. The captain pressed on, his voice steady and unwavering. The Mexican government aims to create a school in this location, a space where children can acquire knowledge in both languages, equipping them for the contemporary world. Miguel's eyes widened in astonishment. Is there truly a school here? A genuine institution of learning, Captain Morales affirmed, and they have already selected the inaugural educator. He gazed at Elena with a depth of significance. Is it me? Elena murmured softly. You are fluent in 3 languages. Your ability to express yourself through writing is remarkable, and your patience in guiding children is truly commendable. Moreover, you possess a deep understanding of both cultures. You are ideally suited for the position. Thomas's heart swelled with a profound sense of pride and joy. Elena, this is truly remarkable. It is the embodiment of all your aspirations. Elena surveyed the kitchen, taking in the life they had crafted together, the future unfurling before them, akin to a flower blossoming in the arid desert. 6 months ago, I believed my story had come to an end, she murmured softly. In that desolate expanse, I believed Miguel and I were destined to perish, lost and forsaken. She gazed at Thomas, her eyes shimmering with tears of happiness. Yet, in those moments when it seems all is lost, you may discover precisely what you were destined to uncover. Thomas nodded, fully grasping the situation. At times, the true miracle lies not in reclaiming what has been lost. At times, it is about uncovering that which you were destined to possess all along. The desert wind whispered softly, bringing with it the gentle embrace of evening as it enveloped their small slice of existence. Yet within the walls of a home that had previously echoed with silence and grief, laughter and conversation now flourished, marking the emergence of a family rising from the remnants of heartache. In that fleeting instant, Thomas realized that the prayer he had long ceased to believe in had, against all odds, been answered at last, merely not in the manner he had anticipated. Scene 9. A scream sliced through the tranquil morning air, fracturing the serene stillness that enveloped the desert clinic. Thomas sprang awake in his bed, his instincts as a doctor immediately on high alert. Outside, the sound of horses galloping fiercely across the desert floor reached his ears, their hooves striking the ground with a thunderous rhythm against the arid expanse. There was a figure racing forward with urgency, the sort of speed that spoke of a struggle between life and death. Thomas, a voice echoed from Elena's room. Something's amiss. With a flurry of movement, Thomas donned his clothes and dashed out the door, Elena and Miguel trailing closely in his wake. In the distance, a rider surged forward at full speed, a cloud of dust swirling behind him like a brown mist. As the horse approached, Thomas discerned the familiar figure of Pete Miller, one of the younger men hailing from Copper Creek. Pete's horse glistened with sweat, its flanks rising and falling with each labored breath. The young man appeared utterly terrified, his complexion ghostly beneath the brim of his hat. "Dr. Whitmore!" Pete shouted before his horse had come to a complete halt. "You must hurry! The entire town is unwell!" Thomas sensed a chill seep through his veins. What do you mean by sick? Pete dismounted, his legs trembling from the arduous journey. Commenced 3 days prior. Initially, it was merely old Mrs. Henderson, followed by the Miller children, and soon enough, half the residents of the boarding house joined in. At this moment, it is proliferating with astonishing rapidity. Elena advanced, her expression grave. What symptoms might one experience? With a high fever and excruciating stomach pains, Pete lamented, I can't keep anything down, as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. Doctor, lives are being lost. Yesterday, we faced the heartbreaking loss of 2 children, and this morning, Mrs. Henderson has departed from us. Thoughts surged through Thomas's mind like a tempest. The symptoms echoed those of cholera, the very affliction that had claimed the lives of his own family. Yet it might equally be typhoid, dysentery, or a myriad of lethal ailments that flourished in the relentless desert heat. What is the number of individuals impacted? Thomas inquired, already advancing toward his medical supplies. Perhaps 40 or 50 individuals, and the situation is deteriorating with each passing hour. Pete's voice trembled with trepidation. Sheriff Davidson claims it's due to the influx of Mexicans passing through town. They claim to have carried the illness along with them. Elena's expression turned steely. That is not accurate. Illness knows no borders. I understand, ma'am, Pete replied swiftly. Yet fear grips the hearts of many. And in times of trepidation, individuals often seek a scapegoat to hold accountable. Thomas stepped out of his clinic, his medical bag noticeably larger and more well-equipped than it had been just a year prior. Elena, please collect all the herbs we possess that are effective for treating fever and stomach issues. Miguel, please assist your mother in gathering food and water for the journey ahead. I'm coming with you, Elena declared, her voice resolute. It's far too perilous, Thomas objected. If my suspicions are correct, you will require every ounce of assistance available to you, Elena interjected. I understand the essence of healing, Thomas. My grandmother imparted her wisdom on diseases and the healing properties of herbs. Managing 50 ill individuals on your own is beyond your capacity. Thomas gazed into her resolute eyes and understood that debate was futile. Elena had resolved her thoughts, and once she did, she stood as steadfast as the ancient mountains of the desert. Today marks the expected arrival of Captain Morales, Thomas remarked. If we happen to be absent, I shall leave him a note, Miguel declared. I will inform him of what transpired. In less than an hour, they set off toward Copper Creek, their horses burdened with essential medical supplies and provisions. As they journeyed, Elena recounted to Thomas the remedies her grandmother had employed during a past outbreak in her village. Willow bark tea for the fever, she declared, her voice unwavering against the gusts, and a blend of mint and chamomile for the stomach. By preventing excessive dehydration, we may hold the key to saving lives. Upon reaching the summit that offered a view of Copper Creek, Thomas felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. The town resembled a desolate ghost town. The streets, once anticipated to buzz with the morning's vibrant activities, lay silent and deserted. Homes displayed yellow flags from their doorways, a somber indication of illness lurking inside. It's worse than I imagined, Thomas whispered. They made their way directly to the doctor's office, a place that had stood vacant since the departure of the last physician 6 months prior. Thomas had always intended to establish a second clinic in this location, yet time had perpetually eluded him. Within the confines, they stumbled upon utter disarray. Individuals reclined on improvised beds, their loved ones gathered nearby, anxiously tending to them with damp cloths and expressions of concern. The air was thick with the odor of illness, a pungent mix of fever, vomit, and the haunting sweetness of impending demise. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a wandering healer caught in the midst of the outbreak, drew near, her weary visage betraying a glimmer of relief. Thank God you're here, she said. For the past 2 days, I have been attempting to navigate this on my own. I suspect it might be typhoid, though I cannot say for certain. With a nod, Thomas set off to assess the closest patient. A young girl, perhaps 8 years of age, bore a face flushed with the heat of fever. Her mother sat beside her, tears cascading down her cheeks. At what point did she fall ill? Thomas inquired softly. 3 days prior, the mother murmured softly. Initially, there was the fever. Then she found herself unable to retain any food. Her condition has been deteriorating steadily. Thomas examined the girl's pulse, brushed his fingers across her forehead, and scrutinized her tongue. The indications were unmistakable. Typhoid fever disseminated via tainted water sources. It was perilous should it go unaddressed, yet it held the potential for management if detected promptly. "Elena," he murmured gently, "I need you to begin preparing willow bark tea. Gather ample supplies and search for a source of clean water. It is essential that we ensure everyone maintains proper hydration." For the next 12 hours, Thomas and Elena toiled relentlessly, their focus unwavering. They glided from one patient to another, assessing symptoms, dispensing medicine, and offering solace to families. Elena demonstrated a proficiency that rivaled that of any seasoned nurse, her soothing demeanor easing the fears of anxious children and their concerned parents as the evening drew near. Sheriff Davidson stood in the doorway, his face flushed with fury, and Thomas caught sight of a gathering of men looming behind him. "This is your fault," Davidson declared, jabbing an accusatory finger at Elena. "Since your arrival, this place has been plagued by nothing but chaos." Elena rose gradually, her hands dusted with the fragrant herbs she had been meticulously preparing. "The sheriff must understand that disease stems from contaminated water and inadequate sanitation, rather than the lineage of individuals." "You're a liar," one of the men behind Davidson shouted. "My son is suffering because of you." Thomas sensed the familiar anger surging within him, yet this time it carried a distinct weight. This moment was fueled by a fierce, protective rage, the sort that arises in a man when his family is under threat. "Sheriff Davidson," Thomas uttered, his voice chillingly subdued, "should you choose to remain in this building any longer, I will be compelled to call for your arrest for obstructing medical care." "You can't arrest me," Davidson sneered, a defiant glint in his eyes. "I am the authority in this domain." Indeed, a voice that was all too recognizable drifted in from the doorway. "I am unable to do that." All eyes shifted toward the entrance as Captain Morales appeared, flanked by 2 Mexican soldiers and Judge Harrison. The captain's expression was somber, his hand poised on the grip of his pistol. "Judge Harrison has bestowed upon me the temporary authority to maintain order amidst this medical crisis," Captain Morales declared with a sense of gravity. "Anyone who dares to disrupt medical care or poses a threat to Dr. Whitmore or his team will face immediate arrest." Davidson's complexion drained of color. He surveyed his men, yet their bravery appeared to have dissipated in the presence of official power. "This isn't over," Davidson muttered, retreating toward the door. "Indeed it is," Judge Harrison declared with conviction. "Sheriff Davidson, you are hereby relieved of your duties while we conduct an investigation into your conduct." As Captain Morales took charge of law enforcement duties for the time being, Thomas sensed Elena's hand intertwining with his amidst the retreating troublemakers. Together, they confronted yet another challenge and emerged victorious. Yet, the true challenge loomed on the horizon, a matter of preserving the lives of those who placed their trust in them. 3 weeks later, the rhythmic sound of hammering and the lively chatter of cheerful voices resonated in the air, marking the construction of the new school. Thomas brushed the sweat from his brow and took a step back, allowing himself a moment to appreciate the fruits of his labor. The structure was rapidly emerging, as volunteers from both sides of the border united in their efforts to craft something truly beautiful. The walls stood tall, and the workers were diligently placing the roof beams into position. "It certainly has an appealing quality, doesn't it?" Captain Morales said, she remarked, approaching him with purpose. Thomas nodded, a profound sense of fulfillment swelling within him. Surpassing all my wildest dreams, the typhoid outbreak had transformed the landscape entirely. Upon the successful treatment of all 50 patients, with not a single additional life lost, the entire community underwent a profound transformation in its attitude. Once, the whispers of suspicion surrounded the Mexican woman and her son, but now, those same voices offered gifts of food and expressions of gratitude. Moreover, the outbreak underscored a profound truth: disease recognizes neither borders nor the hues of our skin. All had experienced vulnerability, and all had sought assistance. The collective struggle united the community in ways that years of harmonious living may never have accomplished. "Elena!" Miguel called out, sprinting toward them from the direction of the clinic. "Mother, the initial students have arrived." Elena stepped out of the clinic, having just tended to a rancher's wounded hand. Her face radiated with joy as she spotted a gathering of children and their parents approaching the construction site. The children represented a blend of Mexican and American families, their ages spanning from 6 to 14 years old. A mix of nerves and excitement danced across their faces Yet an unmistakable curiosity united them as they stood on the brink of this new adventure. "Welcome," Elena called out, her voice resonating in both English and Spanish. "Greetings and salutations to our newly established institution." Thomas observed Elena as she gracefully navigated through the families, offering her name with warmth, kneeling to engage with the timid children, and providing comfort to anxious parents. Her innate talent for teaching was evident, a quality he had witnessed blossom more profoundly with each passing day as they readied themselves for this pivotal moment. "Mrs. Elena," one little girl inquired with deliberate precision, "will you truly teach us to read in both languages?" "I shall guide you in reading, writing, and thinking in both languages," Elena vowed. "You shall be equipped for whatever future you decide to embrace." Judge Harrison made his way toward the group, a formal document in hand that exuded authority. "Mrs. Vasquez, I have a little something to share with you." Elena grasped the paper, her hands quivering ever so slightly as she absorbed its contents, her eyes brimming with tears, and she lifted her gaze to the judge in sheer astonishment. What could it be? With a furrowed brow, Thomas inquired, his voice laced with worry. "This is my teaching certificate," Elena murmured. "Formal acknowledgement from the Territorial Education Board. I have truly embraced the role of a teacher." Captain Morales advanced with a warm smile gracing his lips. "There is additional information to consider. You have also received certification from the Mexican government as an official educator. You have the authority to instruct students from both nations." A modest assembly of onlookers erupted into applause. Thomas's heart swelled with pride as he observed Elena graciously receiving congratulations from parents and community leaders. Amidst the ongoing festivities, Thomas stood slightly detached, his gaze sweeping over the vibrant tableau with a sense of awe. A year prior, he existed as a shattered soul, drowning his sorrows in alcohol within the confines of a desolate cabin. At that moment, he found himself enveloped by the warmth of family, the camaraderie of friends, and a profound sense of purpose. "You seem deep in thought," Elena remarked. She approached him, Miguel by her side. "I was reflecting on the extent of change," Thomas remarked. "A year prior, I believed my existence had reached its end. I believed I had exhausted all that I could offer. And now," Miguel inquired, gazing up at him with eyes full of brightness and curiosity. Thomas surveyed the lively construction site, observing the families ready to place their children in Elena's capable hands, and the clinic where he welcomed patients who journeyed great distances for his care. "In moments of profound loss, I have come to realize that such endings often serve as the catalyst for discovering what we were truly destined to embrace." Captain Morales took a moment to clear his throat. "In the spirit of fresh starts, I have something to share." All eyes shifted toward him, and Thomas observed that the captain appeared distinctly uneasy. "Elena," Captain Morales said, his tone both formal and gentle. "In recent months, I have been fortunate to witness your journey of reconstructing your life, marked by both bravery and elegance. You have transformed into more than a mere survivor. You are now a leader, a healer, a teacher." Elena's cheeks turned a delicate shade of pink as the implications of the moment began to dawn on her. "With the blessing of Dr. Whitmore and in honor of your late husband's memory, I humbly wish to inquire if you would contemplate the possibility of becoming my wife." The atmosphere grew thick with anticipation, each person poised in stillness, breath held in unison as they awaited Elena's reply. Elena cast her gaze first upon Captain Morales, then shifted to Thomas, and finally settled on Miguel. "What are your thoughts, mi hijo?" Miguel's smile stretched from ear to ear. "I believe Captain Alejandro would excel as a father figure, and he has vowed to instruct me in the art of riding as a true soldier would." Elena cast a glance toward Thomas. "And what about you? What are your thoughts on this?" Thomas experienced a fleeting surge of panic, the familiar dread of abandonment clawing at his heart. Yet, as he gazed into Elena's eyes, he discovered not abandonment, but a profound love. The love of a sister, a partner, a genuine friend. "I believe you are worthy of every bit of happiness this world has to offer," Thomas expressed with heartfelt sincerity. "It seems Alejandro has stumbled upon a rare treasure in you." Elena's smile illuminated her face even as tears cascaded down her cheeks. "Indeed, I shall marry you." The audience burst forth in a symphony of cheers and applause. Captain Morales lifted Elena effortlessly, twirling her in a joyful dance while Miguel bounced with uncontainable enthusiasm. As Thomas observed the festivities unfold, a hand gently rested on his shoulder. Judge Harrison stood beside him, a smile gracing his face as he took in the unfolding scene. "Thomas, what you have accomplished here is truly extraordinary. Your contributions have forged a legacy that will endure through the ages." Thomas gave a slight shake of his head. "I have not produced anything." As I turned the handle of my door, a sudden knock echoed through the air. "At times, that is all that is required," the judge remarked with sagacity. "Occasionally, the most profound miracles emerge from the tiniest gestures of compassion." As the sun dipped below the horizon of the desert, casting vibrant hues of orange and gold across the sky, Thomas gazed out at the expanse that had come to be his sanctuary. The new school loomed, a structure only partially complete, yet brimming with potential. The clinic thrummed with a lively energy. Families from both sides of the border united in their efforts, crafting something truly beautiful. Elena drew near, her visage radiant with joy. "Thomas, I want you to understand that regardless of the circumstances, you will forever hold a place in our hearts as family. This space, this existence we've crafted, belongs to you as much as it does to anyone else." "I understand," Thomas spoke gently, "and I want you to realize that rescuing you and Miguel was not merely about granting you a new existence. It bestowed upon me one as well." Miguel dashed toward them, his face smudged from frolicking with the other children, yet his eyes sparkled with delight. "Dr. Tom, will you escort Mother down the aisle at the wedding?" Thomas gazed upon the boy who had grown to be as dear to him as a son, at the woman who had taken on the role of a sister, and at the community that had woven itself into the fabric of his family. "It would be my honor," he remarked. As the stars emerged in the vast desert sky, Thomas realized that the miracle he had fervently prayed for 3 years prior had truly manifested. Not in the manner he had anticipated. His wife and son had not come back from the grave. Instead, he found himself bestowed with something entirely unexpected, a gift beyond his wildest dreams, the opportunity to forge a new family from the remnants of the old, to unearth meaning in the act of serving others, and to realize that love, when shared, expanded rather than waned. The miracle had not graced his doorstep after all. He was the miracle, poised just behind the door, prepared to respond when someone needed him most. In rescuing others, he had found his own salvation.